Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists, this is Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric.
Eagle 8 HD over destroyed homes, floating vehicles, and flooded neighborhoods in the aftermath of Debby's impact here in Florida. The survey flight, the focus of today's episode of Tracking the Tropics. Debby not done yet, but of course, tremendous concern here in the state of Florida. Let's bring in our entire team, of course, co-hosts of Tracking the Tropics, meteorologists Amanda Holly and Rebecca Barry joining us here in the Stream Center. And a friend of the program, Grant Skinner, WKRG Meteorologist, joining us from Mobile, Alabama, providing some perspective. And also, photojournalist Jim Hockett will be the voice in Eagle 8 HD, which is currently live over unincorporated Sarasota. And these images, Amanda, Rebecca, Grant, speak tremendous volumes as to the damage that is left behind. Tropical Storm Debby was what dropped this as a tropical storm as it hit us just a couple of days ago. Then moving into Georgia, now into the Carolinas. We will be providing a forecast update a little bit later on in the program, but our focus right now is on this survey of the damage that has been widely reported on over the last 24 hours on WFLA News Channel 8 from Sarasota and Manatee counties. Yeah,
we're talking historical rainfall from Debby. You know, everyone's talking about it being just a tropical storm. Well, we always said that this was going to be a flooding concern, both in terms of storm surge and the freshwater flooding. And we're seeing this come to fruition. Between 15 and 18 inches of rain fell in the area that we are seeing now. And obviously the sun is out, but there's just nowhere for that water to go. So significant flooding being reported there in many different parts of Sarasota and Manatee counties.
Rebecca, these are streets that are still underwater.
It's just wild to see. You know, just a moment ago, it's hard when you're looking at video like this. What you're looking for are reference points to know how deep that water is. I like mailboxes. There's a stop sign kind of in the northern corner that they are having to pull their engine up a little bit. It looks like it's on a jack plate, and so it's certainly not traditional boating depth right there. There's a car. Well, now, just a few minutes ago, we did see the roof of a car. Basically, all you could see was the roof. Yeah, the car was completely covered. But that van, it looks like, got stalled out in some higher water. So hopefully the water's gone down a little bit there. I would think it had to have gone down a bit.
Now, I will say, Jim, the photojournalist in the chopper right now, he's been flying over a couple different areas. He's inland from I-75 right now in Sarasota County, just south of Fruitville. And I'm getting reports from there as well on the ground where water is actually still rising because less water is just kind of still flowing into these areas where it's trying to find a way out, right? Eventually, it'll all hopefully flow out into the Gulf of Mexico where it doesn't get trapped. But the water's still moving down there, and there are some spots that it is receding, and there's some spots that we're still seeing the water slowly rising.
Ooh, there's some trucks going.
Yeah, I want to check in with photojournalist Jim Hockett, who knows this area well, having covered news on the ground in Sarasota for many, many years. And Jim, these are difficult images to see. What are some of the things that you've noticed up there from Eagle?
Yeah, hey guys. So right now we are east Sarasota County, east of the interstate, east of Lake Sarasota. Just for reference point, let me tell you, this right here, where these trucks are, is Palmer Boulevard. And if I move over this way, this is where it intersects with Lorraine Road. Believe it or not, this is Lorraine Road. You wouldn't know it right now because there are boats on the road and cars flooded out. But this is Lorraine Road, and this is where it heads down toward Bea Ridge Road. So that kind of gives you an idea what area we're in. But these roads are completely closed right now, obviously. Yeah, like they said, this water has nowhere to go. This is water coming in from the eastern part of the county, and it just had nowhere to go. And it does not normally get like this. I've lived here. I grew up here. I was born and raised here. I've never seen it this bad in this area. This is unprecedented flooding for this area. And also to give you an idea, this is all relatively new construction. Mm-hmm. These are new developments for this area. You know, this obviously, these are supposed to be lakes. This water is supposed to be here, but the street flooding is what they're not used to. And then this area over here, this neighborhood right here, obviously a little bit lower, saw the brunt of it. Like you said, here's a house with a car you can't even see anymore. That's just the roof of the car, and that's all that's left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's Amanda was noting the mailbox there too, Jim. So Jim, what we're gonna do? You continue your normal flight path. I mean, continue surveying. You can make your way around Sarasota or beyond.
We're going to head west. We're going to start heading west in toward town and see what we see. But you can see how much water there is here. I mean, all of these streets are flooded. Luckily, the homes are a little bit higher. I don't know if they got water into them or not, but it gives you an idea how much water there is down here. And it's going to be a while before this dries out.
Jim, we'll monitor your, of course, shot from Eagle. We'll stay with it for a majority of our live stream. And Jim, I'm leaving your mic open. You chime in at any point if there's something that we need to see or know. Again, photojournalist Jim Hockett in Eagle 8 HD. I'd like to shout out the pilot as well. Who's piloting Eagle today, Jim?
We got Steve up here with us today. Steve Odell.
Steve Odell piloting Eagle for us. I'd like to check in with our featured meteorologist, Grant Skinner, joining us from WKRG. And Grant, this is, you don't have to be from Florida. These are powerful images that we're seeing because of the number of lives impacted here in Sarasota and beyond.
It really is remarkable to see, especially seeing that home with water halfway up the house. And cars, almost flooded to the top. Some possibly flooded all the way to the top. And this was something that we talked about for days leading up to this. This was going to be a significant rainfall event. You can't just focus on just the category of the hurricane because that only tells one part of the story. That's just the wind speed. When you talk about the impacts of these tropical systems, they drop a lot of water, a lot of rainfall over areas. And so still areas in parts of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, they're going to see a lot of rainfall in the coming days. They've already seen a lot of rainfall. So it's just a very significant event, not only for Florida, for other areas as well. But when you see these images out of Sarasota and Manatee County, it's just, it's pretty remarkable. This is, again, historical flooding for this area.
I'm going to jump in here because the area that we're looking at right now is actually where my sister works. They have my sister and her husband own their own business, and that is the industrial park that they work in. And their little building is the only one that's not underwater. Everyone else is currently underwater, and their road is flooded to get in there. They've been trying to get their vehicles and their equipment up to higher ground. But it's been getting pictures. And that's the report that I was getting. That area right there specifically is still rising about an inch per hour right now.
So that must be where all the waters are growing. They're draining down there.
I was looking on maps to kind of see where all of this is eventually going to go. There's a couple of very small streams, basically very small canals that eventually this will flow into Philippi Creek, if anyone's familiar down there. But it's going to take some time for this to head out.
I think what's really just hard to believe is just how widespread the flooding is across multiple sections of Sarasota now, because we are continuing our flight here and we're just seeing water. Just widespread water all over the place. So
this is an interesting area for the amount of rain that has fallen. 15 to 18 inches was estimated on radar. We have some reports of that in this area as well. What we saw with Ian was where all of that rain fell was a little bit farther inland in the state, and a lot of that fell and then flowed down through the Myakka River and then out through the Peace River. This area in particular is not really going to flow in that direction. It's flowing more toward the city, so it's a little bit more populated of an area where all of this rain fell. Historical rainfall, 11 inches was recorded officially at the Tampa International Airport in one day, and that was the highest ever daily record rainfall that they've ever received in Sarasota at the airport. But even farther inland, they got up to 18 inches in some spots. So there's just really, this water is going to take some time to go somewhere.
Rebecca, Grant, Jim, you guys can hop in at any point. Again, we're live here on Tracking the Tropics, Eagle 8 HD surveying damage in Sarasota and Manatee counties over the course of the flight. We'll be following Eagle for the duration of the live stream here and also be giving a Debby update here shortly. But yeah, these, and I want to point out as well, WFLA.com is a great resource. We have a lot of information there for people that are seeking information. That might help them out. So I think power outages, the numbers have been significantly decreasing. That's encouraging news. But there are some areas here that it's going to take days, if not weeks, hopefully not months, but weeks for them to get really back up.
Yeah,
and running with full power.
The areas that, their homes are flooded and stuff, that's going to take weeks of recovery. They're going to have to clean out the water and get back in there. But that doesn't happen until the water goes down. And we don't really know how long it's going to take for some of those areas for that water to recede, for them to be able to get back inside their homes. We've seen this with the past couple of storms with coastal flooding and actual storm surge, but this is a little different scenario where this is from rainfall. This is fresh water that came down and is just kind of percolating into the lowest spots that it can find.
I think it's interesting because the National National Hurricane Center came out and said we're going to focus on messaging for inland flooding this year for storms, and this is kind of a punctuation mark on that because this is what you can see,
And I'm zooming in right now on radar just to kind of give you an idea of the area that we're looking at. The white bullseye that you see, that swath down from Osprey up through Lakewood Ranch in through Myakka Head. This is the area where we're seeing that 15 to 18 inches in a 36-hour time span. I mean, that is a short amount of time for 1.5 feet of rain to fall on the ground and then, not have anywhere to go.
And in hindsight, if the first couple of forecast scenarios for this storm had worked out and it had taken days to get past us instead of just one,
we'd be looking at 3 feet of rainfall because, a week ago we were looking at this instead of stalling off the Carolina coastline, we were looking at it stalling off of our coastline. But hey, like JB mentioned, the storm's not done yet. It is now going to stall off the Carolina coastline, and they're looking the South Carolina, North Carolina coastline, looking at 2+ feet of rain in the next 2 and 3, 4 days.
And I'm worried about some of the convection just breaking off and sitting over some of the inland areas of the Carolinas where you start to get a little bit more terrain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is called, I think you said it, the other day, it's called the low country for a reason because it is low there. Mm-hmm. Charleston floods on a king tide, on a full moon. The city is underwater. We're talking about 2 to 4 feet of storm surge possible up there. On top of all of the rain that we're going to see.
I want to hop in here because we had reported video from right here. Jim, can you give us an updated location as to where you are?
Yeah, this is right off of Fruitville Road in Sarasota. This is Cardinal Mooney High School. This is their football field. It is completely underwater. And I've never seen that happen before. That's very unusual. But we're going to check out this area over here right off of Fruitville Road. This is going to be west of where we were earlier.
Yeah, we saw video of Cardinal Mooney High School and the athletic fields being submerged, and it's hard to tell from Eagle, but it sounds crazy. That might be an improvement over the ground video that we had on stream just yesterday. But yeah,
the water may have gone down a little bit since yesterday, I'm sure.
How long is it going to take? Grant, Rebecca, Amanda, waters to recede in a situation like this. What are we talking about here?
This is a strange situation just because of kind of, like I said, where it's at. There are streams that run to the Gulf of Mexico from where we're seeing video from, but they're just really small streams. And this is a significant amount of water. So it's going to take some time for all of this to flow into those spots, into the streams, and then obviously out into the Gulf of Mexico. But, there's going to be some spots where it doesn't have access to some of those streams and it's going to sit there. And then it's going to take some time to dry out. They're going to have to use pumps and things like that if it comes down to it.
It's literally going to be area by area as far as how it drains, whether it's more like a bathtub, like the industrial park that Amanda's talking about, where water's flowing into it, but there's only one out.
Yeah, and this is a good shot right here. You can kind of see the sheen on top of the water. This is exactly why we say don't go through these flooded waters, because not only are you talking about fertilizer and things from the ground that are in these waters, but at this point now we're talking about pollution, oil from cars and things like that, and who knows what that sheen is. Just a lot of messy polluted waters go, so this is why we say
A
stay
lot
out
of
of it.
sewage is compromised
Yes,
during these things.
And actually, I think Sarasota Sheriff's Department, Police Department, they put out something on social media. Don't open the manhole covers because that's putting a pressure on the wastewater systems. There's been situations where water's been flowing out of those. And so it's all a mixture. You don't know what's in there.
And I just hate to see people walking through the waters because any tiny little cuts could get infected and very, very dangerous infections.
So mosquito control will be, something that the county's going to have to look at because any water that's not moving, it's going to be standing, and that's going to become a pretty big issue as well.
At least it's dry this week. That's the only good thing.
Yes, we have a much drier pattern setting up. There will be a few downpours here and there passing actually from the outer circulation of Debby, but nothing like what we saw over the weekend.
Unfortunately, we still have an onshore flow, and that does challenge the rivers draining out.
It does challenge it. We're still going to see some higher than normal tides along our coast. I wouldn't really call it storm surge, but it'll look like just a higher tide when we have like a full moon. But this is just some incredible footage here of a significant amount of water just sitting there.
And Shannon Binkin of Better Call Binkin is focusing tonight on how to make sure you don't buy a flooded car because all of these cars are going to kind of be run through a fixer-up and then put right back on the market.
It stinks, but there will be people who seek to make, a buck or two in light of a tragedy, in light of devastation. There will be, scammers out there, folks. Just be careful. We talk about it all the time. Here's an area where traffic is being rerouted because at one point the roadway is clear, another point it's completely flooded.
And to that point, I think I'm following Eagle 8 HD on a flight tracker app, and he's over Bay Vista and Beneva Road right now, which is an area we've been featuring heavily on WFLA. This morning, our reporter, Beth Rousseau, she was out there doing a live report. A car drove behind her and ended up floating away. They had to go help this person that drove through these flooded waters because it is too deep for you to drive through. Police can't block off every single road, so just don't drive through those flooded waters.
I think some people don't realize it only takes a small amount of water to sweep a person off their feet, and then also a car as well for it to lose control. And that's unfortunately in situations like this when water's rising fast, it's hard to tell. So it's best just to turn around and don't go through those flooded waterways. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of these vehicles that hopefully folks were able to vacate and get out of the area before this happened because it's just a remarkable amount of flooding in this area.
I'd like to bring up a point for our audience joining us on social media. Tracking the Tropics streaming presently on the WFLA Facebook page, some other Facebook pages as well, the WFLA YouTube page. If you're joining us on either the WFLA Facebook or YouTube page, what we're going to start to do is take comments using our hashtag system. You can use hashtag Hey Amanda for meteorologist Amanda Holly, hashtag Hey Rebecca for meteorologist Rebecca Berry, or hashtag Hey Grant for WKRG Meteorologist Grant Skinner, joining us from Mobile, Alabama. Any of those hashtags, and we're going to bring your comment interactively into the discussion. Just use the hashtag with your comment on social media. We'll feature it and bring you guys into the chat. So we'll look for those comments starting now. I guess we also have hashtag Hey Jim for Jim Hockett, or hashtag Eagle 8 HD. Eagle 8 HD is live. There's a pup right there on the boat, probably very confused over just all of the water. But yeah, Eagle 8 HD right now doing a survey flight over Sarasota. Jim, can I check in with you for an updated location, roughly?
Yeah, I think Amanda just said we're over Bay Vista and Beneva. It's like you said, it's a little hard for us to tell. But yeah, we're in. This is more of I'd call this central Sarasota County. We are east of downtown Sarasota. But these are older neighborhoods. And I was also going to mention I think it was Amanda that mentioned Philippi Creek, which is a creek that runs through Sarasota out to the bay. it is not a very wide creek. It is not really equipped to handle this much water. So that is not going to be a solution to this problem by any means. This is going to have to drain some other way, because Philippi Creek is just a very narrow creek that runs through Sarasota. Amanda could probably talk about that more.
Yeah, so right now the area that you're over, Jim, Philippi Creek runs under it, but it's called a creek for a reason. It is literally a creek. It is a very small ditch, basically, that kind of runs through some of Sarasota County and then out to the Gulf. But it is somewhere underneath that, it's not a puddle of water. It's a large collection of water, but it runs underneath there. But yeah, it's not going to take that water quickly anywhere anytime soon.
No, it's going to take a while. That's for sure.
And obviously this is, a lower area as Jim zooms out. You can see some of the drier spots, but this water's collecting in one of the lower spots that kind of meets where the creek is at. And this is just one of the lowest spots where some of those, homes are at as well.
Jeremy here with the comment on Facebook Live for meteorologist Amanda Holly. #Hey Amanda, has there been significant tree damage, or is it all mainly flooding?
We have gotten some pictures of some big trees down here and there. There wasn't there were some wind damage reports here, in the 50 to 60 mile per hour gust range. We had a couple of those reports. And a lot of the flooding caused the ground to be really soggy. I do know that yesterday, some of the tree cutting companies were lining up in Sarasota County ready to help out with that in case, there were any in the road and things like that. But this has definitely been a significant flooding event. Look at that. Jim is zooming in now on that flowing water.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, this is Philippi Creek. It looks like a river, but this is Philippi Creek, and it is not doesn't normally have this much water in it.
It's not normally flowing that fast either.
It is bearing the brunt of all of this. Yeah, it is bearing the brunt of all of this drainage right now.
Which is good. It's good that it's moving, because that means it's moving somewhere. But yeah, normally, like I said, it is a small little stream of water, not a river flowing through there.
And the rivers are going to bear the brunt over the next couple of days. They're going to continue to swell, even in areas that did get the flooding. If you're downstream from those areas, those river levels will continue to rise.
Yeah, a lot of our rivers right now in the Tampa Bay area are in moderate to elevated flood stage, and they're expected to either stay here or rise over the next couple of days, because all of this water is still kind of moving into the lower spots. So if you live along a river and the river hasn't come up to you yet, be mindful. Go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, if I was to guess, based on the way these cars are up against each other, that was water flow that caused them to float up against that house. They were not parked like that.
Yeah, that's tough to see. A lot of cars right there that are, completely, they're done.
I think some people don't understand how fast flooding is.
Yeah.
And, when you look at these images, you're like, why didn't they leave? Well, it's just really fast. It happens before people can make that decision a lot of times.
Well, in a lot of these areas, you would never expect this. You know what I mean? I mean, even if we saw 15 inches of rain in a storm, it's just very unusual to see this water kind of piling up like this in these locations.
We'll bring in a comment here from YouTube.
This area.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Go ahead.
This
area has seen street. I was going to say this area has seen street flooding, but I don't think it's seen this kind of flooding in decades.
Let's bring in this question from YouTube Live. Nature Guy on YouTube Live says #Hey Grant. We'll bring Grant into the conversation here. Any reports of gators or water snakes moving into residential areas yet? We had that one photo yesterday. We were, I don't know if you ever heard from Don as to whether or not he
thought it was an eel.
Yeah. Likely an eel. I think most of the people in our comment section thought it was an eel, but we have seen some pictures and videos of, including,
we had a lot of walking catfish.
Yes, so many catfish.
Pictures. And, I do know that in some of the areas where Jim was at earlier, that is a very big, popular area for alligators. There's a lot of alligators out there. So I haven't seen any reports, though.
Maybe some displaced alligators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any reports on social media specifically, but I think
All right.
it's safe to say that there's likely going to be a lot of wildlife, especially in these flooded waters, because it's coming from many different sources, and so that's why it's so important to stay out of these flooded waters
You're
for
good,
so
Jay.
many different reasons, not just wildlife, but others as well. But again, no specific ones that I've seen, but I
Hey,
know there have
JB,
been
I'll
reports
tell you.
in the WFLA.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
And Amanda, I'm sure will agree with me, but us Floridians have a saying: if there's water, there's the potential for alligators.
Uh-huh.
That's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially there in anywhere. I mean, in Sarasota County, we have, the Myakka River that runs really close, and there's alligators pretty much in every little lake and stream. Also, the fire ants, the piles
Yep.
of the fire ants coming out of their,
That's the stuff of nightmares.
homes. Yes,
okay?
and it's a thing. So any of those waters, we were talking earlier about the pollution and the sheen and the oil and, the fertilizer in the water, but I think I'd be even more scared of the wildlife.
Yeah, no doubt.
Hey,
Jim, we're
JB,
gonna stay.
just be advised.
Oh, yep.
JB, real quick, we have to head out for fuel and a pilot switch out, so we're going to be breaking away for now.
Okay, we'll follow you, Jim. In the meantime, we'll go picture in picture and look at the latest with Debby. What do you got, Amanda? I mean, this is still a tropical storm and still has the potential to dump historic amounts of rain, correct?
Yeah. So, on satellite picture, what you're looking at right now, it doesn't necessarily look that impressive, right? But under all of those clouds are a significant amount of rain. And that's just what's going on currently. So this is the 11 a.m. advisory, still technically a tropical storm. It's got 40-mile-per-hour winds. It's going to move out over the Atlantic again and probably maintain that tropical storm status here. We are talking about it, though. Look at this timeline. I know the little icons aren't adjusted, but it's not going to start to pull away until Friday. It is Tuesday. So all day today, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 days of rain that is going to be dumped in this area. And we are talking about the possibility of 2+ feet of rain in Charleston, all the way from Charleston up through Wilmington and just north of there in the Carolinas. And then as Rebecca was talking about earlier, it's a very mountainous region. So mountains help squeeze some of that moisture out as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, with a lot of tropical systems, we've seen even more catastrophic flooding inland Carolinas than we've seen along the coastline there, between the mountains squeezing out more moisture, the fact that the water that falls on higher elevations drains very quickly down to the lower elevations, and that puts a lot of pressure on those lower elevations, and we see really, really fast, potentially catastrophic flooding.
Yeah, and then up north, the flash flooding is just a lot. It's a lot worse than what we see down here. But I'm zooming out on the map, and even up through the northeast, this moisture will eventually go to in the next 5 days. So this is going to be a storm that produces significant flooding. It's going to be remembered for the flooding concerns. I will say for our folks here in the Tampa Bay area, again, we are expecting some passing showers over the next few days. But you can see we're not under like the bullseye of the yellows and the oranges. We're talking about maybe an inch of rain accumulated total for our area over the next 5 days. So that's good.
Yeah, I was happy to see the sunshine today.
Yes. It's humid. It's really humid, but it's drier. And Grant, there, you guys kind of were on the drier side of this system.
Yeah, so a lot of dry air behind it, but that also meant a lot of heat for us, and of course that heat will eventually, dive a little bit further east as well. But again, looking at some of those the rainfall potential, and this is something that I've been looking at over the past several days, looking at that stretch between the Big Bend of Florida all the way up through parts of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and again even the New England states. And that was something that I was looking at on the 7-day rainfall potential about 3 or 4 days ago. You could see all up the coastline areas getting 6-7 inches of rain, and those areas are even more flood prone. So it's just it's extremely concerning for several different areas, but notably areas like Charleston, low-lying area, they're supposed to get they've already had a significant amount of rainfall and even more on the way, possibly another 10 to 15 inches of rain, and up to 2 feet possible total. It's extremely remarkable to see some of these totals out of this. And on top of that, you have storm surge as well, which already caused issues on parts of the Florida coastline. And then you look at areas along the Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina coastline. They're also going to see some minor surge as well. Not as high of surge as some areas along the coast of the Florida, west coast of Florida, but areas along the East Coast will still see some storm surge.
again, live here on Tracking the Tropics. Eagle coming in for fuel, and we were going to continue to stream Eagle as it surveys damage in Manatee and Sarasota counties, not on this edition of Tracking the Tropics, but on our next live streams coming up on WFLA.com. So for folks that are looking for more of these live aerials, this survey flight for Eagle, if you don't see it on Tracking the Tropics, you will see it on WFLA.com. Amanda, I'm bringing you back up here with weather graphics with, again, meteorologist Rebecca Barry and meteorologist Grant Skinner.
Yeah, just kind of wanted to give, I've been getting a lot of questions on kind of what's next, right? Obviously, we're not done with Debby, for the eastern half of the United States. Tampa Bay area is, but what's next? Well, we are tracking a tropical wave out there right now. The models have been kind of backing off on that development just a little bit. So National Hurricane Center keeping that 7-day development chance at 30% on the lower side for now. And it does look like it's going to stay down to our south, which is some good news. But we are moving into a pretty favorable pattern over the next 3 weeks for the Atlantic for more development. So even though this one, not necessarily a concern for the United States, we are looking at more development in August, September, and October.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy season. I think we've been talking about that a lot. But you did note on the Klotzbach's hurricane predictions that got updated today.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So we just received, is that graphic in here?
It's not.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Philip Klotzbach from Colorado State University, who we talk about often on here on Tracking the Tropics, their storm predictions. They did update their forecast for the rest of the season. And before the season started, they had 23 named storms. They upgraded that to 25 named storms when they did a mid-season update. But today's update, they brought that back down to 23 named storms. Now, they really just said that was because we haven't seen a lot of small storms form so far. And that means we're still looking at a lot of storms here developing over the next 4 months. Now, that does include the 4 storms that we've had so far.
Yes, but anytime we can get marginally good news, we like to celebrate it.
Absolutely.
So that was marginally good news.
Brought that number down just a little bit.
We had a question come in. It was on screen there, and I lost it because it left the queue. And again, we're going to try to get to as many of these questions and comments as possible over the course of the live stream. And it was about any idea how many homes have been flooded, I mean, it's certainly in the hundreds, if not thousands, of homes that have seen, and that can be, look, there can be flooded front yards and backyards with minimal damage on the inside of the house. There are some homes that are total loss as a result of Tropical Storm Debby. So it's gonna just figuring out the extent of the damage is going to be an extensive process. No?
Yeah, tough to say exactly how many storms, but I do know that yesterday we reported there were over 500 rescues alone down there in Sarasota County. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the number of operations that are currently going on with the flooding, the extent of the flooding.
Yeah, because some people didn't go out in the waters. They stayed put and called for help and were rescued. And that was a very smart thing to do.
Very smart.
Yeah.
A couple of meteorologists from WKRG saying hello. Shout out as well to WKRG Chief Meteorologist Ed Bloodsworth, former WFLA meteorologist on the Max Fender A team, who is I think he's opened almost every season of Tracking the Tropics from Mobile. So very familiar with the storm team over there in Alabama, my old station, going back a few years. Let's go to David's question here. Hashtag Hey Amanda, when could waters go down for people in flood areas?
I mean, it's going to take days for this water to recede, if not weeks, depending on where you're at in the areas that are flooded, because there's just a lot of water and not a lot of movement toward the Gulf. Everything's just kind of overwhelmed right now. A lot of water. It's when we say there was 18 inches of rain, that is 18 inches of rain in one spot. So when you're talking about 2 counties wide of 18 inches of rain, that ends up being, a lot of cubic feet.
It's a giant volume of water.
Swimming pools of swimming pools of swimming pools of water that have to move somewhere. So it's going to take days for this to go somewhere.
Cassandra says, hashtag Hey Grant, are they looking into pets that and animals that may have been left in homes or farms? We talk about this in the aftermath of storms, but people sometimes forget that it's not just people that get lost. It's also our pets.
It is.
Well, I was about to start freaking out a few minutes ago when we were zoomed in on that boat that had the dog walking around. And then I saw his owner, so I knew that he wasn't by himself, but he didn't get stranded.
Prior to us on stream, Jim was down there. We were noting that there was he was over a farm, and there was a camel down there in eastern Sarasota. So there are lots of animals there. Grant, I don't know if you've heard of any of rescues.
I haven't heard any rescues in that area, but I know that's pretty common. Whenever you have just disaster response teams coming in, they're looking for any life in those houses, and so if they can find people that may have been trapped in their home, also pets as well. They want to be able to again, help them as best they can. And we're likely seeing those rescues ongoing right now. Although I don't have any specific reports of it, I know they're likely ongoing. There are some people are likely trapped in their homes, cars, and the pets as well. And so they're likely doing those rescues right now. That's something that's pretty common with disaster response. Any sign of life, they want to be able to help out, especially those pets in the homes as well.
We have a nice comment here from LB saying, #Hey Amanda, just got to tell y'all I'm in Georgia and you guys we're basically saying that we're doing a good job. And we really appreciate that. And so here's the thing. It's this is our backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, we might be in Tampa, but Sarasota is part of the Tampa Bay region to us, and
home for me and Jim, who you heard JB said earlier. This is my home, where we're seeing videos from right now. I was talking earlier. It was my sister's job. Her livelihood is in jeopardy at this point. So it's tough.
And we had that question come in about animals too. And right before we began our live stream, Eagle 8 HD and Jim Hockett found this, and I'm going to kind of try to zoom in here.
That's what we were just talking about.
The camel.
Yep, there's the camels.
Horses. Yeah, it's a lot of farm area where we started the stream out in eastern Sarasota, east of I-75. A lot of land, but that also means there's a lot of land animals that are out there as well.
And we'll come back to
You got
Eagle.
us?
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
No, I was just I heard you guys talking about what we saw earlier. So where those camels were, there is a wildlife rescue out there, a big cat.
Oh, hold on, Jim. We lost you for 1 second. Stand by. Jim, stand by for 5 seconds. Stand by.
Oh, yeah.
There's a zebra there.
3, 2, Jim, you should be back. I'm sorry. Take that away.
I was just going to say, just east of the celery fields that we were showing, that's where all the flooding is, where the industrial parks were. Just east of there is a wildlife rescue facility called Big Cat Habitat. And that's where we saw those camels and some zebra staying as dry as they could, but surrounded by water. But it looked like the big cats were safe and sound and dry where they were.
Wow. I didn't even know that was there.
Again, this is video from a short time ago from Eagle showing some of the camels and horses. You never know what you're going to find with an eagle flight. I mean, we have found some not only do we make observations from Eagle, but sometimes we'll make an observation about an area that's been really, really hit hard, and we'll send a news crew in that direction because we've seen it from Eagle, and otherwise you might not be able to get to that area.
Was it an Eagle stream that you found the cat trapped in the car?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
that was another one. No, that wasn't Eagle. Oh, no, actually, no, I'm sorry, that was Eagle. Yes, there was the time. Forget where it was. I think it might have been Polk County.
It was somewhere south because Allison Henning was there.
Oh, that's right.
So it was either in Sarasota or Manatee.
Yeah, there was a cat trapped in a car, and me being a cat lover, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
I went really far on that one. I started contacting the police and telling them to get that cat out.
Oh, no.
That was one that
we all love our animals.
Just because no one else saw it.
Yeah.
And that was we saw it on stream, but no one else saw it, and so that one was really, really important to me. But again, looking here, Tropical Storm Debby currently making its way up the coast. And, we had a question come in. I want to go to Marcel. Marcel asking here, Amanda, for you, asking, I lost it. Marcel, I'll bring it right back. There it is. Hashtag Hey Amanda, does storms hit New York and surrounding communities tomorrow?
So right now I want you to look at eventually JB will bring back up the graphics there. The movement at this point on this graphic, it says 6 miles per hour. That's going to move even slower over the next 2 days. Eventually, Marcel, this is going to move off to the north. The whole circulation will be kind of pulled. It, might not necessarily really be tropical, but it's still going to bring all of that tropical moisture up toward New York. And they are going to deal with this, but not likely until Friday and Saturday.
That's, of course, a concern for at least half a dozen states in the short term. Maybe, look at that. I mean, going all the way up through the Northeast, maybe a dozen or so states in the long term. Significant. Let's check one more time on Eagle 8 HD as they get closer to refueling.
They look like they're getting close, right?
Looks like they're over the bay now.
Yep.
There's downtown Tampa.
So it takes about 15 minutes, I guess, to fly back and forth.
A little quicker than driving.
Yeah, just a little bit of it.
What we had yesterday, I'd like to cycle this back here as we're going to make this a last call for your questions and comments. What I'd like to do is bring up some of that drone video that we had yesterday from I think it was Brian Helms. So courtesy to Brian Helms for the video that you're about to see here on the center of your screen. There it is. There's the drone video. And we'll use this as the backdrop over the final minutes of our live stream here just to answer as many questions as possible. You see all the hashtags around your screen. We're interactive here from the Stream Center. So on Facebook Live, on the WFLA Facebook page, YouTube Live on the WFLA YouTube page, if you use any of the hashtags around your screen with your comment, we can feature it interactively on screen and we can bring you into the conversation. Again, live with WKRG Meteorologist Grant Skinner, our featured meteorologist today. I'll be looking for all the hashtags here around your screen. Let's continue to, Veronica said, where are the sewers? This brings up an interesting, talking point. All of this water, it might sound like a dumb question, but it's actually an interesting conversation because we've had it, I know, in the past. All of this water has to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is the ground mostly going to absorb it in Sarasota and Manatee counties? Are we talking about the Gulf really bringing that water back into the Gulf itself? And then how long does that process take?
Yeah, I mean, if we had 18 inches of water over the course of 3 months, yeah, it would all soak into the ground. It would be really nice. It'd fill up our aquifer, but 18 inches in 36 hours, that water's not soaking into the ground. That is a slow process. So this is all eventually going to flow out into the Gulf. The questions about sewers, they're great and they help, but not with 18 inches of water in 36 hours.
Yeah, there's not much that you could do with that, unfortunately. And sewers do get overwhelmed in these circumstances. And a lot of times that leads to sewage intrusion into these floodwaters.
Again, spotlighting all of your comments using our hashtag system. So type in your questions now with the hashtag to be featured on screen, like Jackson Coke here with this comment, hashtag KJB. The tail end of Debby still getting us in Sarasota today. I thought it was done with us. So any lingering precipitation in the area, is it Debby related or is it just our normal weather pattern for this time of year?
That trail across us this morning and during the day today, that was one of the outermost rain bands. I call them tropical tails. When a system pulls away from us like this, it's just still dragging tropical moisture across us. So it's certainly related to Debby.
And because, Debby's going to sit not too far away from us for the next 3 days. It's a very outer circulation, but it is going to send several bands of rain over the next 2 and 3 days through our area, but it's not going to be consistent rainfall. That's why I was saying maybe we could get an inch and a half of rain, depending on where some of those downpours set up, but it's not going to be 18 more inches.
We'll go to this one here from Kristen Johnson, hashtag KJB. My mom is in Daytona Beach. We just left there last week. How is Daytona doing with flooding? And, we have really been hyper-focused on some of those Gulf Coast counties. But East Coast of Florida, did they see? People ask about Jacksonville.
North of Daytona, yeah. Jacksonville saw about 6 to 8 inches of rain in some cases. My parents are a little north of that in South Georgia. My dad said they got about 6 inches of rain last night. and the wind gusts at their place in coastal Georgia were in the 30-mile-per-hour range. So they had some down trees, but not too bad.
Yeah, but Daytona specifically, I think they maybe got 2 or 3 inches of rain. I don't have the exact number there, but it was significantly less because the moisture kind of stayed just from Orlando west toward us here in Tampa. So not a ton of rain there in Daytona. I think that they're doing okay with flooding.
Got the next question.
As far as I'm aware.
Next question's coming in from Mike on Facebook Live. # Hey Amanda, what's the forecast for Charlotte, North Carolina?
Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to be kind of one of those areas that are under the gun for that 2+ feet of rain over the next 3 and 4 days. You are inland a little bit, so you might be on the edge of some of those higher totals, but it is going to be a flooding event for you as well.
Let's see here. Maurice says, how is Beneva and Clark in Sarasota?
Beneva and Clark and Sarah, I don't know specifically in terms of flooding. I haven't heard that area being closed, but it is an area that saw this 15 inches of rain in Sarasota there. So take it easy. Don't drive through there, and don't be driving around too if you don't have to in Sarasota. I know everybody wants to get out and kind of see what's going on, but it makes it a lot difficult for everybody else that has to be out to get around.
And I checked in with Allison Henning last night because she lives down in Sarasota, and she said that some of the flooded streets that we're featuring are just about a mile from her house, and she didn't get any flooding. So it was pretty surgical.
Yes, and so this water really all did flow into these. There's just some, apparently, we wouldn't have really known, but apparently there's some big pockets of some low-lying areas near that Philippi Creek we were talking about earlier where all of this water is just kind of settling in.
Let's go to this one, and it's for Grant, but it's more of a very local question for us. Holly wants to know, is there any footage showing McIntosh Middle School on McIntosh Road in Sarasota? It's interesting. If Eagle had been up, that's one of the cool things that we can do with Eagle. What we can do is if anybody says, hey, I really need to see this particular area, we've done that in the past. Like, hey, my grandma's house, I haven't heard from my grandmother. Can you go check on it? We will do that with Eagle.
Yeah.
Eagle's not currently up. They're down for refueling. But
I will say McIntosh Middle School, Philippi Creek runs nearby, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's flooding. It's actually not too far from Cardinal Mooney, the football field that we saw earlier with Eagle. Okay. So it's possible that there is flooding there, Holly. I haven't seen any footage from it, though.
Drizzy here says, # Amanda, how bad is the flooding in Tampa? We haven't really talked much about Tampa.
We haven't, but we have gotten some pictures, some videos. You were talking earlier yesterday about some roads that were specifically you're a little more familiar with.
Yeah.
The South Tampa region and then a little bit north of there.
And so Bayshore has been closing tidally. We've seen tidal flooding in Bayshore. Yesterday along Dale Mabry near the stadium, on the east and west side of Dale Mabry, it went down. It goes down if you're to turn off into one of those neighborhoods, and there was significant flooding, floating cars, that sort of a thing. I drove it again this morning, and the ditches are full, but the roadways were dry. If you're familiar with Mom's Place, it used to be Mom's Place and Pop's Place right beside each other. They're diners. Now it's Hale's Black Brick and Mom's Place. They still had water in their parking lot, but it looked passable at this point. Yesterday, it did not look passable. Just a lot of rain in South Tampa. But
a lot of rain.
But I live a little closer to McDill, which is kind of the highest point of the South Tampa Peninsula, and we didn't have any flooding, which is surprising because we're right near all of the construction where they are redoing the way that stormwater drains off. They're redoing the ditches. They're redoing the way that they pump out water for scenarios just like this, and that has slowed down our normal draining. I've noticed with some of the summertime thunderstorms, but we didn't have any issues. Now they didn't work yesterday, but they did. I heard them this morning back in their big equipment down. Beep, beep, beep. 6
Back
a.m.
at it.
Ocean Girl with this comment from YouTube Live, not directly related, but I see the helicopter shots and I miss Paul. Yeah, shout out to this comment because, we miss Paul. We miss Paul a lot here. Paul Lamison, former voice of Eagle 8 HD, chief photojournalist and friend to all of us here at WFLA, who we miss all the time when we send up Eagle. And it's something that's difficult for us, but we do. We miss Paul, and we know he's watching right now. He would watch all of our streams all the time. He was just he was stream obsessed. He loved the format because he'd get to talk a lot, and he would be devastated by what he saw. But very much. Jim has done a phenomenal job, and
I was
Jim
going to
knows.
say Paul and Jim were good friends, and
Yep.
Paul, I'm sure, is very happy that Jim, is doing that job right now.
I think if Paul could pick anybody to do this assignment, especially today with Sarasota in particular, it would be Jim. I mean, and Jim has done a very admirable job, given the fact that this is his home as well as it being your home, Amanda. We'll go here to a few more. This is like a last call for questions and comments, and we got to wrap up the live stream here, folks, in just a couple minutes. So last call, type them in now if you want to get them on the live stream. Madison says, hashtags for Amanda and Grant. For those of us who live out east, Lorraine and Palmer, when can we expect the water to start receding? Are you familiar with Lorraine and Palmer?
Yeah, I am. That's where we started with Jim this just about an hour ago. That's where Jim was at, and we were seeing some of the animal footage that we were just seeing that's kind of in that vicinity. But I would say, I mean, it's tough to say how long. I would give it a day or so, and then hopefully it will start to recede. But it's really tough to say just because it depends on where all of this water is coming from. We need a really good aerial survey to be able to kind of judge that, because I know you're not the only one wondering. My sister, who wants the water to start receding as well so that her business isn't affected, I would say at least a day or so, because it's going to take some time.
Man, when your family gets impacted by weather as a meteorologist, you get the hard questions. I bet you and your sister have had some hard conversations.
Calling me this morning while I was on air, asking if there's, a scientist that I can call, a geologist or a waterologist. She was just naming all of the things to tell her when the water was going to start to receding. So I know we want to know. It's just kind of tough to say. I don't think it's going to rise too much more at this point, at least for some of those flooded areas. The rivers, I think, are going to rise a little bit in some spots, but because we're not seeing a ton more rain, I don't expect the flooded areas to rise too much more.
Okay.
Lil Patty, hashtag AJB power outage update, please. I just talked to our team in the newsroom. They said 2,000 people still without power in Sarasota. That's actually sounds like a lot, but that's a really low number given the widespread flooding that we're talking about. And I think all the power crews out there that are probably, those early shifts now, they might be back onto their second shifts, given the scheduling. Shout out to all the first responders and the power crews that have been doing a tremendous job. That number was in the tens of thousands. It's now down to about 2,000. And they're getting some well-deserved rest, I'm sure, in the days ahead.
And did you see Brittany Muller's email that Jacksonville Fire and Rescue sending down crews to help with the rescues and to help with things? So the whole entire state's really pulling together.
Yeah.
As do we when other states get affected. I remember when Texas was getting hit hard, all of our crews were going over there, and then since we're not done with Debbie just yet, these crews have a long week ahead with restoration then coming in the Carolinas.
Yeah. Alabama crews, Grant, will head down to Florida. Florida crews will head up to Alabama. We do share a state line, so that also works that happens quite a bit.
Ooh, if you check your email, we've got some Sarasota pictures from Jeff Patterson. I'm sorry, go ahead, Grant.
I was going to say, it's very common for kind of all hands on deck whenever situations like this happen. That way, power can be restored as quickly as possible. I mean, the fact that when we're seeing images like this, and we're down to only 2,000 outages is pretty remarkable, especially given the fact that there were so many areas affected by flooding on top of, the surge wind issues as well, causing damage in some of those areas. It's a pretty huge improvement based off of where we are now compared to where we were before.
And Grant, it's funny, my husband and I talk about the different timelines for each individual when the storm's over. So for me, who didn't get any damage, whose yard isn't that messy, the storm's kind of over for me today. For other people, the storm's over when their power comes back on. For other people, the storm's over when their debris gets picked up, from. So I think for these people, it's going to be quite some time for them to feel like the storm's over.
Yeah, not a name that they're ever going to want to hear again, that's for sure. And Debbie impacted us, 7 years ago I remember back in 2012, it was near our area because it sat over us for, 3 days and had a lot of beach erosion. But that was just a little different of a storm. This one, obviously going to be remembered for rainfall.
And do you think they'll retire it?
Lee and I were talking about that this morning. There have been 5 deaths so far, a significant amount of flooding, certainly a lot of damage. But I was kind of surprised that I don't believe that they retired Idalia. Did they?
I guess not. Yeah. And so,
And I was surprised about that.
yeah, for inside baseball, the World Meteorological Organization meets in the summer, and they take a look at the storms of the previous season and anything that was particularly deadly or financially damaging. They vote and decide to retire names, and that way you don't ever have to deal with another Hurricane Katrina. So they're trying to limit trauma like that. And so then they have to replace the name, and it's kind of a complicated process because for all 7 hurricane name lists, they alternate male, female. And so if it's an I name that was a female I name, they have to come up with another I female name, and the I storms get retired a lot. And so that we're getting into some out of the box I names, if you will, when we start retiring those. So I was interested to see what everyone thought. What do you think, Grant? Do you think they'll end up retiring Debby?
It's a possibility. I think, it's one of those things where it's also going to depend on what we see coming out of areas like South Carolina, North Carolina. And unfortunately, the next several hours, days are going to be bring a lot of flooding for those areas. And they're forecast to bring, over 2 feet of rain for some spots. So I think there's a possibility given the amount of flooding expected for those areas. And again, some of the flooding we've already seen for parts of Manatee and Sarasota counties in Florida and areas inland as well, along South Georgia as well. I think it's a possibility that we could see this retired.
I want to bring up those photos. Rebecca, you were referencing these photos a short time ago. These are the photos from WFLA WFLA reporter and veteran storm reporter Jeff Patterson getting these. We can't see, obviously, the insides of houses from Eagle, so this is a shot, or series of shots, rather, from Jeff that he sent in just a short time ago.
At least they put their couch up.
Yeah. We're somewhat prepared, but there's definitely a lot of water in that home. I wanted to give an update on the waters receding. We do have, I guess, confirmation of the Celery Fields Dam opening. I am not necessarily sure what that means and where that's going to go and if that will allow the water to flow out a little bit quicker. And then the Manatee County Dam, I know that there were some discrepancies with that. We had a reporter on that asking the county some questions. So I do believe we'll have some information on that story for you coming up this evening on WFLA shows. But hopefully, the bottom line, that means the water will begin to recede a little bit quicker.
Can we go rapid fire through the rest of these in the queue? Last call for your hashtag comments. Let's just go through as many as we can really quickly with some quick responses from our Max Fender 8 weather team with WKRG Meteorologist Grant Skinner in Mobile. Let's go to Murmur, hashtag KJB. A tree fell on my friend's house in Lakeland this morning. Luckily, they weren't there, and their cats are okay. That's of course, that's good to hear about the cows. But
yes.
Yeah,
and Lakeland was actually an area where I know you said rapid fire, but didn't necessarily see a ton of rain the first day, but ended up getting quite a few bands of rain that came through yesterday. So they saw some of those gusty winds. They had a couple of bands on Sunday, but then yesterday a few more of those stronger bands ended up going through.
And how long does refueling take? Is there a possibility we could get Eagle back during the stream?
Yeah, sure. It went down about 7 or 8 minutes ago, and it usually takes 20 or so minutes to refuel.
So
Might leave up the live stream. I'm going to go check before we end the live stream on YouTube, especially. I'm going to go check to see if there's a chance that we'll get Eagle back. Because I might just kind of leave that up, even though we have to move on to other priorities here at WFLA today. Darren wants to know, hashtag KJB, how about Hudson? Hudson, Florida.
Hudson was an area. I do think Trevor was near Hudson yesterday.
He was in Hudson
Pasco,
Beach, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and they definitely had what we call storm surge flooding. So that was Gulf of Mexico water coming in, but that would be coastal flooding. I don't know. I haven't heard any reports of that water. That water, if it was from the Gulf, has receded. Not sure about any flooding from rainfall there.
And there was a very friendly dolphin.
There is a friendly dolphin. If you've seen the picture on social media, that is where he was at yesterday, Hudson Beach. There was a dolphin that wanted to say hi in his live shot yesterday.
A bit of a cameo. Fire Life on YouTube Live, hashtag KJB, is a current Uber driver. I've talked to a lot of drivers in Tampa and Sarasota that are having a hard time getting people there. Yeah, I mean, it's all travel impacted. Dozens of cars, if not hundreds of cars, are just done for. So there's a lot of travel difficulties presently.
Well, and then, the Uber drivers are having difficulty getting around and picking people up because Google is having a hard time keeping up with what exact roads are closed. So I imagine that is going to be a headache for a few days anyway.
And on yesterday's stream, Jamie Cook interviewed an Uber driver. It was in one of these neighborhoods that was flooded. Someone had DoorDashed or Uber Eats themselves some food, and that poor driver was trying to get it there.
Wow.
That's rough.
Dedication.
At least meet him at the edge of the water.
Yeah.
Kayaks.
Marcel just says, guys, our socials, I think that we're all at WFLA, JB, Rebecca, Amanda, you're at?
WFLA Amanda Holly Weather, WX on Instagram.
Grant, you want to shout out your socials real quick?
Yeah, as a WKRG Grant Skinner on Facebook, and then grantskinner.wx on Twitter, on X, and also on pretty much everything else.
Last few that we're just gonna cycle through here. Takesha says, #Amanda, are there any more systems forming? We did talk about that a short time ago.
We did, and I can certainly pull that graphic back up. Right now, over the next 3 to 5 days, I'm not overly concerned about anything, but I will say heading into the last half of August, we're moving into a little bit more favorable of a pattern where we're going to see more tropical waves coming off the coast. We have a batch of rising air, which helps that tropical formation. And in general, it's just going to be a little bit more favorable of an environment. So we will be watching for more storm formation toward the end of August and beginning of September, which is peak of hurricane season. And remember, we've got, peak of hurricane season to go, plus October and November, which are, can be rather active as well. So nothing in the immediate week future, but ahead, yes.
It's definitely going to hold off until the week that I have off at the end of August.
It always does, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to schedule time off as a meteorologist, wherever you are. If you're in Mobile, Alabama, Tampa, Florida, this time of year.
We avoid the August through October timeframe.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I booked it, I was like, I'm not going on this trip. I'm going to go ahead and buy that insurance.
An excellent question here from Dylan. #Hey Grant, how many tornadoes were produced from this storm? We had a conversation, I think, Rebecca, I think you might have been part of it, or maybe it was Jeff or Eric, but we were talking about how we weren't seeing, it was lightning strikes.
No lightning.
Yeah, we didn't have a whole lot of lightning with the storm.
It wasn't a ton.
So tornadoes, we had
more than
a
we'd like.
few.
We had a lot of tornado warnings, Grant. I don't know how closely you followed as it was, near our coastline.
Yeah, so I was following it actually. I was working all this past weekend, so I was following pretty closely. I don't know an exact number, but I did see whenever I was doing my coverage here, kind of showing people where it was and kind of where it was moving and the effects to our area with a lot of dry air here on our stretch of the Gulf Coast. Up the coastline, there were, unfortunately, I saw 2 or 3 confirmed tornado warnings during my coverage. There were a lot of tornado warnings, though, throughout the course of the several hours and again a couple of days that it kind of moved up the coastline, starting on the immediate coast in southwestern Florida. There were warnings that I saw at the start of my coverage, and then kind of riding up the coastline, many tornado warnings. And I of course saw some people going wall to wall, of course, for some of that tornado warning coverage there. So again, it was very active in terms of the total number of tornado warnings, which we typically see with these tropical systems. It's very easy for tornadoes to spin up along these bands that move through the area. But again, I didn't follow it close enough to know the exact number, but I did see several warnings.
I know that we had a confirmed waterspout moving onshore in Pinellas County on Sunday evening. And then there was a picture, I believe, confirmed of a tornado on the ground for a short period of time, either in southern Polk County or Hardee County. But those were the only 2 confirmed reports that I had heard.
There was a storm spotter that spotted one crossing I-75, I believe, in Manatee County.
Okay.
So I think that would bring the total up to 3 that we know of.
Yes. So, I haven't heard of the National Weather Service being able to get out to do any kind of damage surveys with these either. They might end up just kind of doing them by radar analysis at this point because of all the other winds that we had going on and the rain as well. So I don't have an exact number for you. But yeah, Grant, to your point, there were a lot of tornado warnings. We were one of those stations that was on the air for quite a while.
A quick update on Eagle. This is the last frame that Eagle fed back from Tampa, where it's clearly, much brighter than it was 48 hours ago. So the update on Eagle, Eagle's refueled. we just do. It's a pilot change, so we don't have necessarily the pilot just yet. So we won't have it on this live stream, but upcoming live streams on WFLA.com will feature our live surveys from Eagle 8 HD. And I believe I've been told that they're going to be going to Lake Manatee and Celery Fields in the next flight. So if you want to follow that, you can do so on WFLA socials or on WFLA.com. The last three that we're going to get to, Daryl, we talked about this earlier. How many people lost their lives from Hurricane Debby? The total, I believe, is 5 at the moment.
I believe it's up to 5. That was the last number I heard.
Yeah, updates on WFLA.com. Stacy, #KJB, Champions Gate flooding. Thank you for all the updates. Do you have a rainfall total for?
Yes. So let me go back to that graphic here.
In the meantime, we'll... Amanda, take your time. In the meantime, we'll come out here on Slider Cam and just remind our audience that Tracking the Tropics. This is our regularly scheduled episode, actually. Tuesdays, 12:30 Eastern. Rebecca,
we're just that good
Central.
at scheduling.
Yeah, this one just kind of fell into our lap, so to speak.
Yeah.
But this is an episode that we would have done regardless of if there was a storm. When we don't have storms to track, we're talking about a lot of fun different topics.
Oh, we get so nerdy. We get down in the weeds.
Grant, I don't know if you like to nerd out, but we'll have to get you on an episode where there aren't too many storms forming because, that's when we really get to talk about weather in depth.
Oh, yeah. I definitely nerd out a lot, especially with, Ed. I mean, we definitely nerd out a lot. And our team is, hey, we're proud to be nerdy. This is something that we're very passionate about, and we're very happy to be able to help the community to find, ways to multiple ways to get information, especially when it comes to issues like this, where you have a lot of flooding imminent, especially for areas now in South Carolina and in North Carolina, going to see a lot of rainfall. Any way that we can help people get information, we want to be able to.
Spot on interactive graphics work here by our own Amanda Holly. Zooming in here on Champions Gate to find out how much rain fell in the area.
So this is estimated over the past 3 days. So it looks like between 4 and 6 inches is a good estimate for, that general vicinity. But you can see just to the north of there, in between Champions Gate and Four Corners, there's a pocket of 6 inches. So you can really see how some of those isolated totals can be a little bit higher in some areas. But yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still a lot of rain in the matter of a couple of days.
And the last question from Steven, #KJB, how's it going to be, or how is it out on Terra Verde, Fort DeSoto area?
Pretty soggy, I would assume. I would think that they'd have some tree damage as well. Certainly not one of the areas that we have heard about a lot, which means it's probably more garden variety run-of-the-mill flooding and damage.
Yeah, I believe southern Pinellas County had anywhere between 5 and 10 inches of rain. Pinellas Park was kind of a bullseye with 12 to 14 inches of rain, but southern Pinellas County there was more in the 5 to 8 inches.
That's going to do it for our interactive Q&A on this edition of Tracking the Tropics. Our thoughts and prayers are with everybody down there in Sarasota and Manatee counties, any of the impacted areas from Tropical Storm Debby. Just real quick, want to ask you guys, how unexpected was this? We talked about the tides. We talked about there being certain elements at play where, look, storm surge and coastal flooding was going to be the themes with this system, and it turned out to be right. And sometimes I think people hear storm surge and they just hear, maybe some weather speak, and they don't actually, put 2 and 2 together with how significant it can be for our coastal counties. Clearly, with this Eagle flight, we were shown just how widespread this is.
And that was freshwater flooding. I mean,
yeah, I think it overperformed in terms of freshwater flooding and rainfall.
2 days prior, we were saying 5 to 10 inches of rain. So, pockets of areas that saw 15 to 18 inches of rain, that is certainly overperforming. I was a little surprised to see kind of those totals, but we did say isolated areas would see, some higher totals, unfortunately.
And the way the storm was shaped and how uneven it was, we got every inch of rain that storm had as it went by us.
Yeah, Grant, what were you going to say there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I noticed when it was getting closer and closer to landfall, that jog to the east, I think, is what really allowed for some of those areas, again, just north of Tampa, Sarasota, Manatee counties. They got a lot more rain than what was expected, because it was expected to stay a little bit further to the west, kind of ride up the portion of the eastern Gulf. You can see that jog right there. and then eventually making landfall close to the area. I actually was looking at this not too long ago, only about 20 minutes from where Idalia made landfall.
Yes.
This past, almost a year ago. So some of those areas that already were hit hard again. But again, Sarasota, Manatee counties, they got more rainfall than expected. I think it was because of that jog to the east, bringing a lot more rainfall to some of those areas than what was expected.
Grant, I'm really happy you bring up that jog to the east, because that's something that we were monitoring on Wobble Tracker. We were talking about extensively on stream for hours, and there it is. I'm glad that Amanda was able to circle it, because look at it. It's almost on the same latitude line as Tampa Bay itself. I mean, it's going really right across there. So how much of a difference did that jog to the east make in your estimation?
I mean, it could have added 5 inches of rain to the total, because instead of, the moisture being tugged north, there was an easterly component to it. So I do think that it made a difference in terms of the amount of rain that we ended up seeing. I know that's an L. It wasn't supposed to be an L.
But here we are.
But interestingly enough, we talked about this on stream. We were on stream on Sunday night as this jog was happening. We had commenters that pointed this jog out from the Wobble Tracker, and we were deciding, was this a wobble? It didn't really look like a wobble. And then the National Hurricane Center didn't really adjust their track too much. But I mean, it really ended up staying on this northeast track then all the way up until landfall.
Well, think about it. With the northeast track, it really contributed to the training of the storms right over Sarasota and Manatee. It might not have trained over those exact areas if it had more of the northerly motion instead of the northeasterly. It would have moved up into Pinellas. It would have moved up into Pasco instead of just sitting and continuing to move over the exact same areas in Bradenton and Sarasota.
Right, because it had that, east motion instead of the forward motion. Yeah.
And allow me, Jeff is going to love this, but I mean, look, allow me to just really, again, give a glowing review of how the Wobble Tracker was utilized, because you're right, it was a commenter who pointed it out. We have it up live on WFLA.com at all times, but it was somebody who alerted me and said, hey, have you seen this wobble? And I said, well, we weren't anticipating too many wobbles because there was such tremendous model consensus in the short term. And then all of a sudden we saw this just eastward progression, and we were thinking, as those scans came in, we said, oh, east more and more east.
It became a jaunt, not a wobble.
And it became a jaunt. Grant Skinner joining us, our featured meteorologist from WKRG News 5 in Mobile, Alabama. Any final thoughts, Grant, before we end out this edition of Tracking the Tropics?
Yeah, I mean, one last thing. I mean, the storm isn't done yet. Still a lot of heavy rainfall expected for parts of Charleston, also up through North Carolina, along the East Coast. If you have family in those areas, or you're watching and you're from that area, be mindful of that. Again, it only takes a small amount of water to sweep you off your feet and to sweep your car away. It's best to just turn around. We always say, turn around, don't drown. That's the best advice I have to give you. Be very smart with these floodwaters. Flooding is going to be an issue up the East Coast throughout the next several days. And for, again, thoughts out to the folks in Manatee, Sarasota County, seeing quite a remarkable amount of rainfall. The drone imagery was just remarkable. It's going to take several days for some of those areas to recover.
Grant Skinner, give him a follow, folks, on social, part of the great weather team there at WKRG. A big thank you to, of course, the hosts of the program, Amanda Holly and Rebecca Barry. And I can't go without mentioning Eagle 8 HD's Jim Hockett and Steve Odell that were part of that survey flight. They are going back up. Additional live streams will be on WFLA.com if you want to follow those flights. Appreciate all your time, resources, and ways that you can help. All of that information on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Tracking the Tropics back for its regularly scheduled episodes. Of course, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central on Tuesdays. And we have additional coverage when storms form, just like the episodes that we've had over the last 48 hours. Those are storm episodes. Whenever we're tracking something significant, we're always here live on whatever website, app, or social media platform that you're watching on. For Rebecca Barry, Amanda Holly, and Grant Skinner, I'm JB Biunno. We'll see you next time here from the Stream Center on Tracking the Tropics.
Find Tracking the Tropics on these platforms. And for storm updates, the latest models, and helpful resources, visit trackingthetropics.tv.